This is Visions Under Construction, a chance for our guests to share their visions and tell us what they're working on. For their continued support, we would like to thank Simwood, straight-talking, forward-thinking telecoms. Simwood.com. Why not make CloudOnyx your communication partner? Go to cloudonyx.io. You can find everything about the VUC at vuc.me, thanks to Bluehost, and thanks also to zipdx.com, the conference bridge, and to voxphone.com for local rate dial-ins. And today's conference update. It's a little over 2 weeks to Cameo World in Berlin. I will be there. Many of us will be there, and we hope to meet you there. Visit cameoworld.com for more info. And my first question is, how many of us will be there? I know Andy can't make it, apparently, still.
I shall be there.
Michael won't be there. Keith, are you coming?
Keith, are you coming?
I'm hoping to, but I've got a lot going on. I have two weddings, two family weddings coming up over the next couple of months, amongst other things. So I'm trying to clear some time.
And hopefully no funerals, as in the film Two Weddings.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so hopefully Corrado will be and James is joining twice. So we have two people, James and James will be there. Corrado is looking into coming. I hope he'll be able to come, but he couldn't make it tonight. We have a bunch of topics, and the first one is just we're going to go around the board and see what anybody thinks of GDPR. If you're like me, well, none of you are, but if anybody has joined like 50 million sites, I have gotten at least 25. All right, let me back up a second. I have probably 10 Twitter accounts. The first one from 2006. And so I have gotten 10 times the message from Twitter saying that they've updated their iOS, their terms, TOS, and you should take a look at it. I admit that in the 10 messages, I still haven't read their new terms of service. Actually, it's their privacy thing that they're talking about. Got one from Tumblr. Got one from Google, got one from every other social network you can think of. Did not get one from Facebook. Why? Because I deleted my Facebook account several weeks ago. Yeah. But GDPR, one of the things about it that I find interesting and look for everybody's comments on is that Mark Zuckerberg did say at some point, well, not only are we going to respect the GDPR, which comes from Europe, but we are going to apply it to everything. Then about a week or two ago, he changed his mind, or whoever is in charge changed their minds. And now there are two. And by the way, Twitter also has two policies. The one privacy policy is for the United States, which is the bulk of users of a lot of these things. And the other policy is for everybody else. And of course, for European, and we got to go into this whole thing about whether the UK is considered European or not. Right now it is. Point being that the protections may differ over the years. Who has something to say about that? I'm sure somebody does. It's interesting. No, James doesn't. Keith, I'm sure you got something to contribute to this. You don't do a lot of these. You're not a promiscuous guy on these sites, right? But what about this agreement? Have you looked through it at all? I mean, do you know what the consequences of GDPR are?
I have skimmed through it because some of the projects I'm involved in may have to be concerned with it. Probably will have to be concerned with it. And I know at some point in time, someone's going to ask me my opinion on it from that point of view. Speaking generally, I don't know the full details of it. I'm no expert on it. It's bound to have issues with it. And there's bound to be people who moan about it going, oh, it's regulation gone mad. But frankly, I like the basic fundamental concept of it. And I think it's kind of long overdue. If nothing else, I mean, there's certain parts of it which I don't fully understand, but I believe that certain things aren't allowable unless you actually give your explicit consent. Whereas previously people would opt you into them without getting your consent. And that hopefully would mean that you're subject to less spam, less gathering of your data without you knowing about it. Obviously, you know, if you're on a site that is as promiscuous as Facebook is, then effectively, you know, you're giving Facebook all, you know, the option to potentially do what it likes, as long, you know, and potentially to spread that further than you'd like. But I'd like to see where it goes with that. But you know, in general, I'm a fan of it. I think it's going to be interesting to see how people, or how companies actually deal with it. In particular, I think when it's going to be interesting as soon as you know, they start receiving requests from people to see what data they hold on them and to delete that data.
Totally agree with you. And before we move to anybody else, if they want to say, here's what I'm looking at is now this is not the official site for this, but it is a private company who's proposing to consulting services to help British, that wasn't me, to help British companies deal with it. But the point is they have simplified the language and it's interesting. So I don't care about the penalties. Here's conditions for consent have been strengthened. Just going to read through a little bit of this so that everybody's on the same page. Literally, companies will no longer be able to use long, illegible terms and conditions full of legalese as a result of requests for consent. Must be given in an intelligent and easily accessible form. The next thing is also, and this is not so much a part of the Facebook thing, breach notification, right? Because we need that. Let's not go into the detail, but the point is, any improvement on breach notification, what is this 2 years later? Oh, by the way, we got breached and all your data belong to somebody on the planet Mars. You can't do that. Okay, and what Keith was mentioning here, right to access, part of the expanded rights to data subjects, the GDPR, right of data subjects, that's us, folks, all of us. Data subjects to obtain, I love this language. This is theirs, maybe not in the law, but this is what it means. To obtain from the data controller confirmation as to whether or not personal data concerning them is being processed, where, and for what purpose. Further, the controller shall provide a copy of the personal data free of charge and in an electronic format. By the way, somewhere it says a readable electronic format. Otherwise, they could TNEF. We were talking about this earlier. They could send it in some stupid format like Microsoft's TNEF, and you have to go look for a converter. This change is a dramatic shift to data transparency. Correct. Right to be forgotten is a highly contested, we'll get back to that later. It's a highly contested thing that people in the States are complaining about. It introduces, okay, data portability, the right for a data subject, that's us again, to receive data subject. That's a new one on me, by the way. But that's what we are, to receive personal data concerning them, which they have previously provided in a here we go, commonly used. There's a lot of typos in this, by the way. These people did not do a good job of writing it. Commonly used and machine readable format, and have the right to transmit that data to another controller. That's pretty cool. Privacy by design, concept that has existed for years now, but is only just becoming part of the legal requirement with the GDPR. At its core, it calls for the inclusion of data protection from the onset of the designing of the system. Sorry, this seems like too much to go into for our discussion. Data protection officers, that's a whole other thing. So anybody have comments now on what we've read so far? Because I think this is actually pretty good stuff, really. James.
Yeah. It's like many of these things. The top level intent with GDPR is brilliant. It's great. It's all about putting the end user back in control of his own personal data. However, I don't see how the world is going to implement it in a way that's actually feasible and workable, at least not in the short to medium term. And how the authorities are going to police it.
There's some talk of, well, first of all, if you don't think they're going to be able to police it, Facebook moved their headquarters from Ireland to someplace in the States. And that was specifically to avoid, in fact, that's how they released the 1.5 billion American users from themselves.
Well,
from
exactly.
Having,
Well, straight away, Facebook have found one way of escaping from a big chunk of it.
Yep.
With one easy move, and immediately the EU loses all that tax revenue.
Yeah, but there's a whole other question. Long story of who's paying taxes where, and they don't seem to pay any taxes anywhere, any of these companies.
But they don't escape GDPR by moving their headquarters.
They do for the US users. That's what's funny about it.
Yes, they don't escape it for the EU users.
No.
GDPR is for the EU users.
Exactly. No, that's true. And I mean, it's a good point, Keith. But that's what's interesting about this is that he initially, Zuckerberg said, or somebody from Facebook said that we're going to respect this even though we don't have to. Then apparently they changed their minds and decided that the 1.5 billion, people in the United States, they don't have to worry about that. So they're not going to change anything for those people because they don't have to. But yes, in the EU.
Yeah, the good old USA, the land of the free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it renders the EU regulation sort of worthless in any way, because all that's happened there is that Facebook have moved their headquarters to avoid having people who don't need to be caught by it. Because if they had their headquarters in the EU, then they would have had to have registered all of the US.
Yeah, that's very true. But as soon as you're in a situation where you have rules in one jurisdiction and no rules in another jurisdiction, the whole equation becomes a lot more complicated.
Oh, it is. There's nothing. It's not going to be easy. It's always going to be complicated.
So my point here is that even though you've got some pretty good, very worthy top-level objectives outlined in the GDPR definition, actually the amount of work that's involved in actually implementing a system which delivers all of that is enormous.
Yes.
And ultimately somebody has to pay.
Well, yes. And the interesting thing I saw about it actually was to say that it's actually going to strengthen the hand of the Google, Facebook and Amazons of this world, because they have the budgets and the resources to actually implement this, and the lawyers. Whereas smaller companies don't necessarily have that, so they may not be able to actually implement it.
And you're absolutely right there. All of a sudden, we have this really quite major, quite expensive threshold that you've got to get over in order to get your data-based business deployed.
That's right. And in fact, that's the whole point of the company that posted the simplified reading that I was doing there, is that they are consultants in the UK who are going to help people get, because you need a DP officer or whatever, somebody who's in charge of that. You know, before life was simple. In 1980, you just needed an IT guy or woman.
Yeah, all of a sudden you've just invented a completely new strata of compliance people.
That's exactly right.
That you need. And at the end of the day, compliance people actually don't produce anything useful. They just make you comply with the rules.
Well, if you think about it, it's a lot like the legal department of a broadcasting station.
And we know how much we love our lawyers, don't we?
That's exactly right. I mean,
I can see accountancy firms picking this up for a lot of small businesses. That they won't just be accountancy firms anymore. There'll be accountancy and data controller firms.
How much do we love our accountants?
We love them to bits, don't we, James?
We do.
Anyway, I would suggest that, while I've read and agreed to the privacy rules of this platform, said no one ever. So, either you read the stuff, like I say, I've gotten a bunch. If you have a Twitter account, you have received a mail from them. I don't know about Facebook because I'm not there. Google, I'm trying to remember. I got something from Google. Oh, it was analytics, right? Because analytics is heavy data, right? Yeah. So they have sent out some kind of a corrected privacy policy. Tumblr, I have like three or four Tumblr accounts. I don't use them at all, but I've had them for years and got a couple of things from Tumblr. Instagram, which is a Facebook property. I don't have WhatsApp. How many of you have anybody? James, you probably use WhatsApp. No?
I certainly do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I use just about everything.
So they must have sent something recently.
Unlike you, some of the other super sensitive members of the community here, yeah, I run the whole lot, and I run multiple accounts. And if I'm sensitive about some of the things I'm putting on there, I'll have a special to use case account that I use specifically for that. But that means that just controlling my multitude of accounts is interesting.
Well, WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, as is Instagram. So
yeah, indeed. Anyway, can we talk about something which doesn't make my heart go
stomach turn?
Because GDPR just really, I mean, it's not a warm, happy subject. Can we talk about something a bit more upbeat and exciting, like open source mobile phones?
Sure, that's
or even eSIMs.
Well, let's get into
Are there any?
Well, let's start with any.
Sorry.
Let's start.
Are there any open source mobile phones?
There are. Wait. Let's go back to start with the eSIM thing, only because I instigated that topic, because there's a Department of Justice investigation in the United States, James, where the DOJ in the U.S. is accusing AT&T and Verizon of colluding to basically, this is my language, sabotage eSIM regulation, or at least the standardization. So what I wanted to do was start with your experience with eSIM, talk about what it is and how it helped you, because you're the only one, unless Keith has, you're the only one who used it, James. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, let's talk about SIMs to start off with. The SIM is not what most people think it is. So here I've got a packet of plastic SIM cards, or people think that the plastic bits. Oh, I love you, Keith.
Okay.
Great. People think the plastic bit is the SIM, but it isn't. The plastic bit is actually just a receptacle in which the SIM resides, because the SIM is actually a lump of code with elements of data in it, normally written in Java. And so the SIM, or the use, and the different flavors of SIM, depending on whether you're on 2G, 3G, 4G, or whatever as well. So they have different capabilities. So the SIM, which is software, can reside either on one of these, which is a UICC, a Universal Integrated Circuit Card.
Correct.
UICC.
Well done. 10 points.
Oof. Or you can have it on a smaller embedded SIM, or you can just have a receptacle, or you can just have it embedded in the hardware. And interestingly enough, here's a Google Pixel 2, which has an eSIM built into it, or the capability to handle eSIMs. It has a receptacle in there into which you can park SIMs. So that's the code and the bits that make it work.
Wait. eSIM in the Pixel?
Yeah.
But you don't need a physical SIM if it's an eSIM, right? Or is there an eSIM module?
Well, in theory, yes. But in practice, the only eSIM that you can get in the Pixel 2 at this moment is the Google Fi eSIM.
Ah, okay. But in Apple's case, there is no physical SIM, right? Or am I wrong?
Sorry?
The Apple, like the iPad that has
the
a
iPad,
SIM.
yeah. In fact, I'm talking to you now. The thing that I'm actually talking to now is an Apple iPad Pro, which has the ability to use eSIMs. And the firm that we used to work, Andy and I used to work for, are one of the providers who provide eSIMs for that platform. We had a small hand in that. So when you buy
we prefer to not have references to small hands for the American market, please.
Yeah.
So when you
don't trumpet about at all now.
So when you buy your iPad Pro, you don't actually have to get one of these plastic physical things and stuff it in there. You can just go to an interface on the screen, and you can call up an eSIM, and you can operate on it without having to stuff one of these in there. and the eSIMs are available from a number of different providers.
And this is obviously a great thing, except that did you read about this the investigation to find out what they're trying to do? Because apparently AT&T and Verizon would like to not have this because they feel that it would make it too easy for subscribers to move away.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they clearly don't want that, because the physical gnaws involved in having to go to a store and sign up and get one of these and then plug it in is enormous, and that friction is what keeps people loyal to one operator.
I would argue slightly with that, because I think the crux of the issue is that currently, if you buy a phone from Vodafone, then it tends to be locked to the SIM there. So even if you do go to giffgaff and you go online to giffgaff and get them to send you one, which is pretty low friction, you stick it in your phone, it won't work because they've locked it, and so you have to then go through the pain of unlocking it. Now,
that's true, but network locks are in the process of going away. It's very old-fashioned.
The impression I got from this lawsuit is it's basically saying that Verizon and AT&T are trying to implement network locks on eSIMs, and that's the issue.
Yeah, and it could be, if it was in Europe, it would probably be construed as a misuse of significant market power, and they'd end up in court over it. Yes. But you seem to be able to get away with that in the US.
Well, this court thing is starting, but my question is, here in Europe, and I mean continental Europe, I think the subsidized phone thing has pretty much gone away, honestly. What they do now is they have credit, right? So you can pay over time, but they're not giving you a phone for $1. Is that still a big thing in UK? Because I think even in the States, that's kind of gone away, hasn't it?
Well, there's now legislation which says that the network operator has to unlock the phone after, was it 1 month?
Ah, interesting.
You're still held accountable to the contract, though. You still have to.
Oh yes, you still have to pay.
Well,
pay for the contract.
But that's contract law. That's completely different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here in the US, they have to unlock it if the phone is paid for. Like, there's still some subsidy that goes on. You can buy a phone now, and if it's heavily subsidized, after the subsidy period is ended, they have to unlock it.
Yeah, okay.
Or if you buy the phone outright from them after, I think it used to be 6 months. You could have it unlocked.
Oh,
but
now in UK, you don't have to do that. Even if you're on a contract, a subsidized contract, it's deemed that the contract is almost like a credit contract, which incorporates the cost of the phone. So effectively, you bought the phone up front, therefore you own the phone.
In some cases, they're not doing a subsidy as much as like T-Mobile, for example, doesn't subsidize their phones anymore. What they do is they sell you the phone on an incremental basis. It's so many dollars a month for the phone.
It's like a loan. But if that's like a loan, you're just paying it off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a flat monthly on top of the service.
Is it separated, though? Is it separated in the contract?
Yes.
You're right. Okay, so that's not the case over here.
Let's remember that when Apple created the demand for the very first iPhone, which, by the way, was a crap phone, basically, that it was AT&T only, and you had to sign for, I believe, 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. And there was not a huge price break on that, by the way. But these days, as far as I know, even in the United States, you can bring your own phone. There are several pay-as-you-go plans. There are even T-Mobile, for example, used to have a 30. I think it's $40 and $50 a month, which to those of us on continental Europe, and I think in the UK as well, is ridiculously expensive for unlimited voice text often to hundreds of 100 countries, and really generous data. Just as an example, I've probably said this 100 times, but I have a €10 a month plan that has 30 gigs. And if you don't travel that much, 3 gigs in Europe, by the way, but if you don't run around too much, if you're mostly in Wi-Fi, 30 gigs is hugely, I mean, I use probably a gig a month at the most. So I could probably be paying €7 a month. In the United States, just to finish, in the United States, I think the cheapest way, well, there's Cricket and other plans, but in the US, you're going to be paying 30 to 50 a month for any decent amount of data and unlimited calls and texts. And I think the UK is probably similar to Europe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big problem with this business of being able to switch your SIM electronically comes when you have your identity associated with one SIM profile. So your telephone number that everybody knows and calls you on. What happens when you go to the US and you switch out that SIM profile for a US one? Well, what happens is that all your calls go to voicemail and all your SMSs sit there waiting for you until you arrive, unless you're using a product which allows you to have multiple profiles, SIM profiles, and multiple user profiles, and maps the two together.
Multi-IMSI SIM.
Well, it's multi-IMSI, but with multi profiles.
I think we may know somebody who offers that.
Well, strangely enough, well, we kind of built it, didn't we? So at any one time, only one SIM profile is active, but you then take one or more, because you can have multiple user profiles, and you map all of those onto the currently active IMSI or SIM profile.
You can do that with eSIM, I'm assuming.
Yes, of course you can. Yes, of course you can.
The same, I presumably use the same structure as eSIM.
And I'm looking around, I'm scratching around here. I've got piles of them. Here's one I prepared. Here's an old one, in fact. Here's one that does exactly that.
Yeah, my main concern with eSIMs is fundamentally what is a SIM? Well, one of the things it does, probably as its primary function, is acts as a security device. And if that suddenly becomes a piece of software, and I'm not that familiar with eSIM technology to know how it's protected, if it becomes a bit of software and it can be replaced in a way that potentially could be hacked, does that mean that people can potentially hack?
Yeah, could it be spoofed? That's a great question.
Can it be spoofed? Can people create?
Because all software can be hacked, right?
Yeah, exactly. Where at least in the hardware, although arguably it's a bit of software on this, it's got hardware protections to restrict your access to it.
That's right. And
you can't reprogram this easily.
Of course, when we met Yulia, James, we figured out that physical SIMs can be hacked too, right?
Yes, that was a marvelous little that was in Madrid, wasn't it?
And
we were doing a presentation about SIMs, and James Tagg, my illustrious colleague, said, and of course you can't hack SIMs. And this little voice came from the front row and said, I can hack SIMs. And she was 26, blonde and blue-eyed. And anyway, she came back later and said, I've had a go at one of your SIMs, and I can still hack it, but I'd have to use chemical substances and a scanning electron microscope to do it. So it's not particularly easy.
SIMs are fairly secure against.
They are very secure, in fact.
And part of that is the hardware around them. So I'm not sure how that works.
And the way the crypto works, because it's multiple layers of crypto, and you don't have all the bits in one place.
No.
So the whole thing is designed. The original concept was actually a UK military project. Which was designed so that you can lose 90% of your assets captured by the enemy and still run a secure trunk system. So the crypto in these is actually quite clever. And that was effectively the same level as 2G crypto. 3G crypto is better, and the 4G crypto, again, is better again. There are ways to get into these, but not through the SIM cards normally. Not unless you've got physical access to the SIM cards.
If I could make
the keys.
If I could make an allusion to the show Just a Minute that a couple of us were talking about way back. This is a deviation from our topic, but I just saw something. We're talking about security and phones. SS7, something was happening recently about improving the security of that because it was became a black hole.
Yeah,
what's going on there?
Yeah,
That's news
basically,
too.
We're not using it. Yeah.
Stop using SS7 because SS7 is notoriously insecure, and use IMS with diameter and SIP instead. Having said that, diameter is not perfect
It's
either.
not really much better. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to have some kind of security agent at the edge of the network, whether it's SS7 or diameter.
But diameter's security is improved by the transport protocols that you use to use on the signaling.
It's multiple layers, and you can improve things by doing things like changing the cryptographic algorithms and being very careful about how you implement them, because a lot of the hacks, most of the hacks that are around, take advantage of places where operators have taken shortcuts.
Yeah. Well, I have to say one of the things with SS7 is because it's so layered and so complex, I think a lot of the hacks actually take advantage.
SS7's not complex. Get into diameter. That gets a bit more interesting.
Diameter's flatter. So I think it's easier to kind of do things like, for example, follow transactions.
Anyway, you might be interested to know that these SIMs are not only multi-IMSI, but they're also multi-crypto. What that means is that if you've got multiple sets of crypto, then you can run your authentication in multiple places, which also means that you can run, if you need to, you can run your own authentication system locally. So you can run your own 4G, 5G radio access network, run your own SIMs and authenticate when you're in your building or on your network. But then you drive off down the road and you need to authenticate somewhere else. You switch IMSI, switch crypto, and away you go. And then the clever bit is then mapping the one or many user profiles onto the currently active IMSI. So I hope I'm not giving too much away.
No, but apparently we're going to have a visitor soon.
Are we?
Any minute. Her first name starts with a D.
Oh, good grief.
So, can we talk about Range Networks now before she arrives?
Yeah, let's get it.
Hey, the bloke from Range Networks, what's his name? He's going to be in Berlin.
Let's see what. Oh, really, David?
Yeah. No, not David. He's not Range Networks anymore because he's now
Michael Idema.
Yes, that's him.
Great!
Michael.
I'd love to see him again.
Yeah, I had a really interesting debate with him at Mobile World Congress, and he was going on about, oh yes, our customers in Africa, they want 2G networks, and I said, well, no, they don't want 2G networks. 2G networks are crap. They only want 2G networks because they don't know what they can do with 3G and 4G networks.
They probably think they're going to get them cheaper.
I believe Michael's in Spain right now, but I actually reached out to him to join us one of these days. Hey, before she gets here, if she does, because I can't tell right now if she's actually going to click on the link, but she asked for it. There's a bunch of other things going on, and one of them, if I could find this, all these links that I put up, was the right to repair. And I don't know, how much has that been going on in the UK or Europe? Maybe not at all.
Has what been going on?
Right to repair. In other words, you're able to, if you buy a car, it's mostly one of the big issues was with tractors, farmers buying tractors and wanting to mess with the firmware.
John Deere, yeah.
But I mean, this has become, let's face it, if you've got a router, maybe you want to slap some other firmware on it or mess with it.
On the subject of slapping people, my dear darling son got into our little Toyota and hacked that. So when you get into it, the splash screen that comes up is distinctly non-standard, and it's really embarrassing when you take it into the garage to have its free service, and they pick it up as an observation saying somebody's been playing with this.
Well, at any rate, in the United States, that's illegal. And the other side to that.
Well, it's illegal in my household too, but it didn't stop it.
Well, in the US, it's covered by what's it called? It's the DCMA.
Well, DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Yeah.
But what they're trying to do is make it illegal for companies to tell. And here she is.
Oh, here's Diana.
Companies to tell you
Hi.
that.
Hi, Diana.
Hey, Diana. There she is.
Hey, guys.
We were just talking about how secure SS7 is, so I thought you might be able to.
What happened?
Your video is on and off.
Is now on or off?
It's off now.
Currently off.
But it was on for a second.
Great.
Well, no, it's not
Friday
great.
evening.
It's great. We want to look at your face.
Yeah, we'd like to see that you're a real human rather than a bot.
Yes, absolutely.
What have you
turn that video on,
Diana? What have you been up? Tell us about what you're working on, because you were working on last time I talked to you was in looks like December 23rd. You said that you were working on something passionate that was fantastic. So what are you doing? Tell us about it.
I actually kind of switched the role in the company for a while. So I actually got really boring, and I started to do a lot of marketing. And one of the jobs I have these days is that I'm setting up the marketing for boot. So our team went to mobile to MVNO Congress.
Was that this week?
Yes, it was in Madrid.
Yeah, I wanted to go to that, but it was not possible.
Yes, Mr. Body, I heard that you did search for me at the booth at Mobile World Congress. We miss each other.
Yes, I was pining for you, Diana. That's what it was. I'd miss you.
I'm sorry. I was kind of busy, but I wasn't trying to avoid you,
Yeah, well, I was a bit. Yeah, we were a bit busy too.
I heard that you got something new going on. Great.
Yeah, we ought to get together and compare notes. But I'm really interested to find out what you're up to. Hey, you ought to come to Berlin for Camarillo World.
Yes.
And bring some of your gear with you. And we can.
But she's based in New York now. Where are you based, Diana? New York.
I'm actually in Bucharest, but that's not usually what we do these days. I mean, we are fully mobile.
Then you should come to Berlin, May 13th.
Come to Berlin.
May 14th to 16th or something.
And then we can ply you with lots of pink drinks and get the truth out of you.
The thing is, I don't travel that much these days because I have a lot of work to do because the company is growing so fast that I had to come back to Romania.
Oh, well, dear. No, all work and no fun makes Diana a dull girl. So you need a bit of fun.
Oh, I'm having a lot of fun. I mean, you should come to Bucharest one day.
Well, yeah, I remember the last time I came to Bucharest. What fun that was.
We know a lot about partying.
Yes, so I remember. Yeah. I'm still recovering from that.
Yeah, absolutely. We know how to have a good time.
Yes, the Romanians certainly do. That is certainly very, very true. But anyway, come on, Berlin. It's only a couple of weeks away, so get yourself across there and we'll look after you.
That's right.
And bring some of your gear with you, because there are lots of people, I think, who would be very, very interested to see what you've got.
I bet you guys are more interested in the radio part than the core network side.
No. We are doing core network. The fact that I've got 4G radios here is by the by, but it's only because you need the radios in order to run the core network and have people roaming onto them with their multi-operator neutral host services. But we use other people's radios. We're pretty agnostic. The core bit is the clever bit.
I agree. I'm definitely interested in core.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, Keith, was it you who said? Was it last year? You said after listening to a presentation we gave, you turned around and said, "I want to build an
open
source core."
Yeah.
And how is that working?
Oh, I've had the time to spend much. I've done bits and pieces on the side, but in my lab, but I've just been so busy that I've not really had much time to look at it.
Well, there are a number of people who have been very busy and building different parts of it. In fact, Diana, bits of yours used to be open source, but I'm guessing you're not all open source anymore, are you?
No, the mobile part is not open source.
Yeah,
and there is a good reason for that. Because we got to the point of understanding that we, as developers, we should actually get paid for our work. We should not get paid from side business like support. You know, so the normal way to actually pay a developer is actually to buy what he's actually developing. And the very straightforward thing for that is licenses. And frankly, I think that we are still the best option in that field, giving the features and the price.
Right. Well, I'd very much like to see what your features are and understand what your pricing model is. But you know what? We will get you out to Berlin. Diana. We're going to drag you out because
we need to get you to Berlin.
Yeah, we need to have Diana on the VUC panel, don't we?
We do.
So, by the way, thank you so much, guys. You are really awesome.
Yeah, we love you, Diana. We miss you so much.
One of the things is that we decided to be a very different company, even if we are like commercial licensing, and we actually published the prices and the specification and the entire documentation on our website. So basically everything we know, it's already on the website.
And what's the URL that people can go to?
8bts.com.
Say that again slowly.
Yes.
Sorry. www.8bts from like base station, s.com.
Yeah, my Ubuntu desktop is going really slowly at the moment.
I'm going to pull that up, as we say.
www.8bts.com. There we are. It's in the IRC matrix chat thing.
And it's going to be right here as well.
And there we go.
There it is. So you can see that, Diana, right?
I just got into the RC.
eNode B, GSM BSS, MS. Boy, there's a lot of letters here that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, I'm keen to know what you're doing for crypto. Are you still using 2G crypto for LTE?
Are you referring to the crypto algorithm within the SIM?
Yeah, because you
4G.
You came up with your own very clever but slightly non-standard way of doing things, didn't you?
What do you mean? We're doing it very standard.
Oh, are you?
We're doing we are doing everything extremely standard. When it comes down to a lot of things, we are all standard. That's what actually made us so different from the other projects that existed in that area, and we're open source because we actually moved to a very standard kind of a core. We did use non-standard solutions, for example, for the connection between the 2G base station and the core. However, we did that because there was an advantage to do such. But in general, we pretty much stick to the very standard kind of a thing. We're huge fans of actually being standard. It's actually so bad that our core network has been tested against a bunch of eNode Bs, and our eNode Bs have been tested against a bunch of core networks. We're totally sticking to the standard because we are in a commercial market where we actually have to. We're selling the equipment in the competition with all the other people on the same market.
Yeah, just looking at the price tags on some of these.
I just ran up a $500,000 bill here, Diana.
Yeah.
Let me see the company.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes, we are the only company in the business that is publishing the prices. Frankly, one of the funniest things is that at the MVNO Congress, we had we literally put the price on the banner, which was really funny because nobody in this market is publishing prices, right?
No. No, you're absolutely right. You have to negotiate quite hard.
We are definitely there to change that.
Okay.
We are a bunch of quackers.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the components. They're clearly. You've come quite a long way since the last time I looked at Yate BTS, which is one of the reasons why I'm keen to sit you down and talk to you and debrief you over a pink drink in Berlin.
I have so much work to do. I mean, I would really love to travel more.
Diana, it's only a couple of days. Come on.
It's only a couple of days.
Come on.
No, literally.
Come
on, guys. Honestly, I'm working during the weekends.
Well, aren't we all?
Work during the weekend and come for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday and leave Wednesday like we're doing. And that's it. Bob's your uncle, as they say.
Literally, I'm working during the weekends because we are growing so fast and I can't keep up with it. I just don't. We're growing that fast. Literally, we've been hiring, we've been expanding. It's a nightmare to maintain the growth. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that I literally have a lot of work, which is great. It's much better than not having it. But, I can't travel right now until things are getting more stable,
All right. Let's stop beating this horse.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll let you off. We'll just have to make do with Michael Edema from Range Networks instead.
Idema,
yeah, him. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him at Mobile World Congress.
Yes. Yeah, so did I.
Michael,
I had a really good argument with him, and
he's a cool guy.
Yeah, he is, but some of his concepts are a little bit flawed, I think. But anyway, I look forward to continuing the discussion.
So when are we going to, Diana? When are we going to see you in public? You must have some place where you have to be at some point in one of these conferences.
Turn your video on. Let's have a look at your face.
Yeah, we saw you for a second. You can turn your video on. But when is your next? When can people find out more about what you're doing? You must be going to some public conference or somebody from your organization, anyway.
Let me turn my video on. Okay.
There we go.
Is it on?
You need to lower the camera a little bit because we have the top of your head, but not the rest.
There we go.
Lower it a little bit.
Is it better?
There you go.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah.
I actually have a cradle and I don't have any control over the cradle. It's just, that's the angle.
It's good enough.
Well, stand up.
Yeah.
Oh, Andy, you're just so
basic.
Empathic.
He doesn't say much, but when he speaks, it's worth listening to.
Okay.
All right. So there you are. When is the next? How can people find out what you're doing? I mean, you must be going to somebody must be going to a conference somewhere. What about that British?
Guys,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say something, but I think it was dumb. I just realized you're not in the real time stuff. So it wouldn't be what is it? ComCon. There's got to be a conference you're going to. Are you going to be at ClueCon or any of those? Astracon? Probably not.
No, I'm usually going to mobile operators conferences. I might be thinking about going to a very small one in US, maybe in July, but I'm not sure yet.
How about Small Cell World Summit?
What would that be?
In London? Are you going to come across to that?
I don't know. It's a really tiny one and it's kind of private, but most likely I'm going to go to Mobile World Congress in America, I believe in September.
Is it September or October?
There's a Mobile World Conference in the US? I didn't even know that.
Yes, there is.
That was always
specifically for the US market.
Ah, okay.
I've done that one before.
Yeah, it was. It started last year. 2 years ago.
But it is very US centric with a bit of South America as well.
Hey, there's a couple of things I wanted to mention before we close out and we can go private with this. One of them was, and we've spoken about this in chats before, but for those of you who have Google Voice, yeah, we're getting down to the basics here, I know, but Google Voice just what am I trying to say?
It's not Google Voice at all.
No, wait, Google. I was going to say Google Voice.
It's Google.
Well, Google
have enabled
the Google Voice system. If you've got those numbers, and many of us do, enabled Wi-Fi chat, and I've been waiting for that for years personally because it's very useful to me. So I've tested it extensively on my OnePlus.
Just explain what the use case is.
Well, my use case is you can know people in the United States. So you're wherever you are in the world, including the United States, you have United States numbers you want to call because you can only call the U.S. free. They do actually have pretty good rates to other countries, by the way, Google Voice. But the point is you've got your Google Voice number. It does what it does. They've been doing this since, what was it, Grand Central, where you can ring several phones. It's all the typical IVR, not IVR, but voicemail. They transcribe the voicemail and so on. But now you can actually make calls. You've always been able to make calls from a fixed computer, but now you can do it on your phone. And originally, as James pointed out last week, I think, you could do it on Fi and you could do it with your Pixel.
Yeah, and you know what? I've got a dozen ways of doing that.
Yeah, and so do I. So do I. But the point is,
Mr. Body.
What's that?
1 second. Mr. Body, do you see what is written on my watch?
It says G.
1 second.
To Diana from James with love. Why are you showing us that?
No, I can't see it. I can see there's lettering on it.
GC 2007.
What is that? Your password to the?
Yeah, well, if you didn't know, Randy, once upon a time, the core of Google Voice was actually Yate for a period of time.
Yeah. I did not.
Which is one of the reasons why Diana was working in California.
Okay.
And that's how she ended up then moving into mobile. Isn't it, Diana?
No, that's definitely not how I moved into mobile.
Google Voice piece. Because
we love having you, Diana. You're the greatest.
No, I actually moved into mobile because I literally like it. I literally like mobile, and I really think it's the future. And I'm very interested in actually just seeing what the future brings. I'm really interested in technology.
And you know what? I think we all are. Keith is as well. And Andy, we all are.
I think
right.
The real future is having the eSIM in your head, don't you think? And plant it someplace. Right? Then you don't have to, because,
I'm not sure where Apple would implant an eSIM.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can think of a few places.
Well, they have got eSIMs already, as we discussed earlier, because I've got one in my iPad Pro here. And rather boringly, they should have had eSIMs in the iPhone 10, but then bottled out at the last moment.
That's interesting. I would have thought they would have. Anyway, getting back to the thing for a second of Google Voice, and also moving to this famous Google Chat or whatever it's going to be called, where they've messed around with 50 different clients to do text, right? Are we any closer to knowing what they're actually trying to do? This is the RCS thing. I mean, is this actually going to go someplace, or what's happening?
You've got to be very careful what you say. When you say RCS, I think what Google are doing is RCS, but only in name. Mm-hmm. And the reason they're doing that is to get the mobile network operators on side.
Yeah.
But what they're actually implementing bears very little resemblance to the GSMA defined RCS, which actually is pretty arse. Yes.
So what are we trying to do with this, though? Is this trying to do what iMessage does, which is to
the idea is that you end up with a phone with a messaging transport built into it, which is not an over-the-top app, so that it's in there and it works just as standard.
It's basically the evolution of SMS.
But it doesn't use SMS. So if you don't have unlimited SMS, which, I mean, how many people don't have unlimited SMS these days? Maybe in third world, but
well, the problem with SMS is it is very, very basic.
It's limited, yeah.
So what they're trying to do is to do what Apple have already done
with iMessage.
With iMessage in the iPhone. But the problem with iMessage is that it's for Apple devices only.
that I think I would argue it's not the same as that. I would argue what they're trying to do, because iMessage is an OTT messaging system, the same as WhatsApp, the same as Hangouts, the same as all these other things. But it's got SMS integration, so that effectively fallback. So if you can't communicate on the proprietary iMessage app, then it falls back to SMS. The difference with what Google is trying to do with that, and I personally, unless you've got some information, I'd be interested to see that, James. But to what I could see, it is actually standard RCS, and what they're basically trying to do is say, well, let's actually implement a standardized. Okay, it's a specific part of that standard, but it's the universal profile, as I understood it. RCS client into phones as standard, as part of the SMS client. And then you can effectively transition people almost transparently from using SMS, which people still do, to using RCS.
I think what the genius of Apple was to do this blue balloon, green balloon thing, which shows that you're one of the poor people not on Apple devices.
Indeed, if you're an Apple user, it becomes almost quite painful to have to send a green message, because you want to send blue messages because you get delivery receipts and all the rest of it, and it's quicker. Yeah. And you know that if you send a blue message, you can see that it's been delivered. Whereas you send a green one, you've got no idea whether it's been delivered or not.
And the person with the green is inferior. So.
Absolutely, they have an El Cheapo Android handset.
The difference really, though, is that iMessage is owned and run by Apple. WhatsApp is owned and run by Facebook. Hangouts is owned and run by Google. Chat will be owned and run by 50 or more different mobile operators across the world. So you're not locked into using a particular service provider for it, or that's the theory anyway.
Yeah, I think the miracle of all of this is that SMS works between carriers.
I think what we're trying to work to is a solution where the actual transport, the infrastructure, can be owned by anybody, yet the messages can be transported in a secure and dependable way. That's what we're trying to get to.
Secure?
I'm not so sure about the secure bit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Secure in that they're not across the internet necessarily.
Well, there are solutions to the secure bit. And I don't know whether you noticed the press release from Matrix about how the French government have just adopted Matrix with Riot, the client, as the government preferred secure messaging solution. We're going to have to get Matthew and Armandine on again.
We do have to get them back on. And you know what? There's enough. We still have topics to cover next week in case a particular guest doesn't present themselves. So, we could probably close this out.
Yeah.
We only covered a small part of what I wanted to talk about, but that's fine. There's a lot of news this week.
The bit we haven't really talked about to do with SIM cards and with core infrastructure is what happens when you take blockchain technologies and embed them into the mix as well. And then as soon as you do that, it really is not a good time to be a big mobile network operator, because the big control that big MNOs have at the moment is this business of being able to do the financial settlement, the billing, rating and billing. But if you can do that within blockchain, then why do you need a mobile network operator anymore? Just a random thought.
And with that random thought, yes.
I would just say that we need a mobile network operator, so we will actually have a way to access the internet.
So you have infrastructure.
Well, you have infrastructure, but what is there to stop a company or an individual running their own radio access network?
You could,
mostly because of the coverage.
Yeah, exactly.
The term mobility comes from.
Well, there is a problem here. I live in the Chalk Valley, which is the largest mobile hotspot in the south of England. And we have big problems with coverage here. And so for that reason, we're running a project down here, which is deploying between 50 and 70 4G cells, but they're privately owned cells, operating as multi-operator neutral host, offering service to any operator SIM.
At the risk of sounding difficult, I've heard about this for a while. What stage is it at?
Evolving. It's a bit like Diana's Yate BTS.
Well,
I mean, it's not built immediately overnight. It takes time to get there.
Let's just say it's keeping us busy from dawn till dusk, on a daily basis.
Yeah, probably not quite as busy as Diana, but it is keeping us busy. And so there are little tiny things like, where do you get the spectrum from when all of the mobile spectrum in UK is already sold to the mobile network operators? I mean, how do you deal with that? Well, we found a way, and it's very imaginative. And luckily, the government minister involved with it thinks it's rather clever. But there we are. More of that later.
I mean, all of that lives in what we call, what is it, layers 7 and 8 of the network, money and politics.
Good one, Michael.
Well, it does, but luckily the government have kind of realised that in order to cover all of the bits geographically and population-wise, you cannot rely on service solely from the big mobile network operators, because we've reached a stage where in UK the big MNOs have turned around and said, you know what, we're not going to deploy infrastructure into that area because it's not cost effective for us to do so, and you can't make us. And so
the "and you can't make us" part seems like an invitation to a contest of sorts.
Well, the government had a jolly good go, and they put coverage obligations into each one of the big UK mobile network operators' licenses. But they managed to worm their way out of it. So if they don't want to do it, it's very difficult for government to force a mobile network operator to do it. Same with BT, with the fixed communications. If they turn around and say it's not cost effective for us to put stuff there, then they won't.
You know what? If you buy a lot in most cities, you have to build on it. And if you don't build on it, you lose the lot eventually. And that's just the same.
And that's exactly the argument that we're using. I think there's a mobile network operator up in Canada who argued the same thing. And they used a law back from the 1860s, which says if you don't plough your field by a certain date, then somebody else can come in and take that field and use it for the year.
Was that Wind?
It was the outfit who ended up putting cellular coverage all the way along the Trans-Alaskan highway and along the Alaskan coast or Canadian coast.
I think that was Wind Mobile.
I possibly, yeah. And they got away with that. And so we're doing exactly the same thing.
And with that,
anyway, that's reasonably unstructured and random.
That's a great place to end. I want to thank Diana, Andy, Mr. James Bodie, Keith Milner, Michael, myself, and whoever else is here. James again, because he's here twice. Anyway, we'll see you next week. We're going to stay around for the private segment of this, where we convince Diana to come to Berlin.
Yes.
Berlin. See you next week.
Come to Berlin.